must have learned how to solve simple equations like this. X plus 4 equals to 7. Then what is the possible values of x? Right, so you take minus 4 on both sides and you will get x equals to 7 minus 4. That gives you 3, right? So when you substitute 3 back into the original equations, then what you're getting for your left hand side will be 3 plus 4, which is equals to 7 equals to the right hand side. So this is what you have done earlier. So what happens if you have equations that involve SURDS? Do you do the same way as what you have done earlier? So what are the concepts involved here when you need to solve equations involving SURDS? Right. Concepts involved here are step number 1. Right, we have to square both sides of the equation. Why do we need to square both sides of the equation? Because if you were to recall what we have learned earlier on, a square root a times a square root a, what does it give you? It gives you a, right? So when you square both sides of the equation, you're actually removing the square root sign. Right, but when you square both sides of the equation, sometimes you will get extra additional answers which may not be valid. That's why you need, after getting the answers, you will need to substitute the values of x into the original equation to see if the value you got satisfy the equation. So the second steps involved here will be to check for the validity of the answers obtained. Alright, so let's do the first step. Let's square both sides. Alright, so the left hand side will just give you x plus 7. And then the right hand side, what do we do with the right hand side? You will have to use the algebraic identity. Bracket a plus b close bracket squared. Right, so let's expand it. Let's simplify. Right, and then bring everything to the left hand side, or rather you can just shift the position. X squared plus 2x plus 1 equals to x plus 7. It's easier to do it this way, and then you bring whatever that's on the right to the left. So you have x squared plus 2x minus x plus 1 minus 7 equals to 0. Right, let's continue in the next slide. Continue. So you would get x, you get x squared. Positive 2x minus x will give you positive x. 1 minus 7 will give you negative 6. Alright, so what you'll be getting here is a quadratic equations. Right, so you can factorize a quadratic equation. You can use the calculator to help you to get the factors. Alright, so x can be equals to negative 3 or x is equals to 2. Right, so remember we said earlier on that right, because when we square the equations, we're introducing more answers, and some of these answers may not be valid. So we will have to substitute both answers back to the original equation. So what is the original equation? The original equation is square root x plus 7 equals to x plus 1. Alright, so let's try with when x is equals to negative 3. Let's start with your left hand side. Left hand side meaning square root x plus 7. So you substitute negative 3 inside. You would get square root 4, that gives you 2. And the right hand side, it's x plus 1, which is negative 3 plus 1, gives you negative 2. So can you see that 2 is not equal to negative 2? right? Hence, x equals to 3 is rejected. Alright, so this is how you check for the if the answer is valid or not. Let's do it for the other answer, which is x equals to 2. So when x equals to 2, left hand side will gives you square root 2 plus 7, that gives you square root 9, gives you 3. And then your right hand side will be 2 plus 1 gives you 3. Yes, so since 3 is equals to 3, therefore x equals to 2 is accepted. Alright, so this is how you can actually, you need to check for the, if both answers are able to satisfy the equations, and then reject the one that does not satisfy the equations, except the one that is satisfied. Up the bar a bit. Let's try to do a more difficult questions. So the concepts involved here, we mentioned that we have to square both sides to remove the square root sign. Secondly, we have to check for the answers that you have acquired at the end, if they're valid or not, by substituting back into the original equations to see if they satisfy the equation, right? But in this equations that we're going to solve, we will have to do an extra steps before we square both sides. The extra steps is we will have to bring your negative 2 square root x plus 6 to the right hand side before we square both sides. Why is that so? Okay, if you do not do that, and if you square both sides, right, I'm going to show you how complicated it will looks like. Okay, and this one, if you apply your bracket a plus b squared equals to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, right, you will see that you end up getting something that's really complicated. Okay, right, so when you square this one, right, you have, remember, you have to square the 3 as well. You don't just remove the square root, right? So you have 9 bracket 2x plus 2, and this will gives you negative, okay, multiply all the integers together, so 2 times 3 and times another 2, that gives you 12, and then you have square root 2x plus 2, and with another square root x plus 6, and this will gives you 4 bracket x plus 6 equals to 0, right? Then you simplify this, that will gives you 18x plus 18 plus 4x plus 24, right? And then you bring your the one with the square root, terms with the square root, to the other side. Okay, so can you see how complicated it is, right? So so if you want to solve math questions effectively and efficiently, you will have to use the correct methods. If not, then you end up having to do a lot of steps, and in the end you may not even get the answer. All right, so we're not going to do that, so let's erase off. This is just to show you that if you do not use the correct method, you end up taking a longer road, and you may not even reach your destination. See so much, how much I need to erase off. All right, so what is the correct, rather what is the more effective way of doing it? So the more effective way will be, bring this guy to your right hand side, Okay, then the next step is that you square it. Okay, right, remember to square the 3 as well. So square 3, you will get 9, and then when you square root when you square the square root will be gone. All right, square your 2, get 4, and then square your square root, the square root will be gone. All right, so we can bring, so 18x minus 4x gives you 14x. 24 minus 18 will gives you 6. Okay, so from here x will be 6 divided by 14. You can simplify it. Do not leave your answer at 6 over 14 because it can still be simplified further to give you 3 over 7. All right, so let's check if this is the answer. Sometimes you may get, sometimes the equation is such that you may not get any answer that satisfy the equations. That means the equations itself is erroneous. Right, so we have to check if x equals to 3 over 7 satisfy the equation. So let's check by starting with the left hand side. So do not assume that even though you get answer means that is the answer. No, you still have to check if it satisfies the equation. Yes, it get equals to 0, which is the right hand side, which is the value that you need to get from the right hand side. So yes, so therefore x equals to 3 over 7 is a valid answer for this equation.